Good evening. Katy Westrom here, reporting live from KPWS News in Monticello. Tonight, we will be taking an introspective look at two pioneers that helped shape the way we study human behavior. Ivan Pavlov is the first person that we will be interviewing. He lived from 1849 to 1936. He was a Russian scientist interested in studying how digestion works in mammals. Hello, Dr. Pavlov. Tell us about your most famous study that you've run.
It's interesting you should ask. Well, I did a study that we tried to figure out what triggers dog in order to salivate. Now, we first began to just observe the dogs, and every time we fed them, we noticed that even if there was no food present, whenever they would come in with lab coats, the dogs would begin to salivate. And I began to wonder, why is this happening? Well, we went in and I decided to ring a bell every single time that they would be fed. And so, we've noticed that after a while, the dogs would begin to salivate even when there was no food, and we would just ring the bell. This led us to a study that they were demonstrating what's called classical conditioning. There's a neutral stimulus, which is the bell, which by itself will not produce a response like the salivation. There's also a non-neutral or unconditioned stimulus, which is the food, which will produce an unconditioned response, the salivation. But if you present the neutral stimulus and the unconditioned stimulus together, eventually the dog will learn to associate the two. After a while, the neutral stimulus by itself will produce the same result.
Dr. Pavlov, how does this study help us today?
Well, through doing this study, we've learned that we can develop associations between events and thus reinforce desired behaviors and eliminate undesired behaviors.
Thank you for joining us tonight, Dr. Pavlov. Next, on KPWS, we will hear from an American psychologist, Edward Thorndike, whose work on understanding mammal behavior helped give insight to the learning process. If you are just joining us now, we are taking a look into what helps shape the way we study human behavior. Now joining us is world-renowned American psychologist, Mr. Edward Thorndike. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Thorndike. Tell us about your most famous study.
What I did was place a cat inside a puzzle box where the only way he could escape was to find the lever that released him. I then placed a piece of raw fish outside of the box to try and get the cat to escape the puzzle box. Then I simply timed the cat to see how long it would take him to figure it out. After they figured it out, I put the cat back in and timed him again to see if he would be able to do it at a faster time. Over time, I found that it took less and less time to get the desired results, thus teaching operant conditioning.
Mr. Thorndike, how does this study help us today?
This helped us understand the law of effect, which is simply that behavioral responses that are closely followed by a satisfying result are likely to become established patterns and to occur again in response to the same stimulus. This also helps us learn from the consequences of our behavior, which is operant conditioning.
Thank you for being with us this evening, Mr. Thorndike. Both Pavlov and Thorndike gave us a new understanding of how the human brain may learn. This has helped us in the field of EBD to understand how we might retrain a child's brain to have different responses. Two key learning points stuck out to me as I interviewed Dr. Pavlov and Mr. Thorndike. As Thorndike says, rewards for appropriate behavior always substantially strengthens associations, whereas punishments for inappropriate responses only slightly weaken the association between the stimulus and the wrong response. This made me understand the importance of encouraging the positive behaviors displayed and to recognize them to strengthen associations of good behavior with positive outcomes. The second key learning is from Pavlov. Through understanding Pavlov's research, I realized the importance of developing associations between events. that just because a child has a natural reaction, that reaction can be modified over time to have a different response and association. Thank you for joining us here at KPWS in Monticello as we took a look into what helped us shape the way we study human behavior. Katy Westrom, KPWS.